And now hear what Breanna Stewart ultimately had to say about this offer, as she absolutely slammed it. This is what Breanna Stewart had to say, man. Time is of the essence. Stewart added that she doesn't know if there's a drop dead date, at which point the league will no longer be able to start the season on time if there's no CBA in place. However, she made it clear that everyone knows they're running out of time and need to get a deal done soon. I think that both sides are very aware that this has gone on way longer than it needed to, Stewart said.
That sound you just heard? That's what happens when people can't agree on a deal. Breanna Stewart is the vice president of the WNBPA. She just said very clearly that the league's newest offer isn't good enough. The main problem? Money sharing? The team owners said they'd give players better housing, nicer places to practice, and raise the salary cap to $5.65 million for 2026. But Stewart said, "No thanks. We want our fair share of the money the league makes. Everything else doesn't matter as much." This isn't just talk. The players and owners really disagree about how professional basketball should work in 2025. And here's the big problem. Training camp is supposed to start in less than 3 months. Time is running out fast.
Man, oh man, it appears these WNBA players, they are nuts. They are absolutely insane, and they are continuing to try to play hardball with these WNBA owners in regards to the latest CBA offer made by the owners. Breanna Stewart absolutely slapped around that last offer. Denied. We have to get into it. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the video for me as well. It will be greatly appreciated.
The timing of all this is really important. NBA owners sent their newest offer on Friday, but guess what? That was more than 6 weeks after the players sent their last offer. 6 weeks, that's way too slow if people really want to work things out. It's more like both sides are getting ready for a fight. The players had an emergency meeting on Sunday to talk about the offer. According to Stewart, the first thing they did wasn't even looking at what the owners offered. They had to make sure everyone agreed on what the players actually want. That tells you something big. Not all the players are on the same page anymore. The WNBPA has been acting tough and united since December. But remember, some Australian players like Jade Melbourne said publicly they can't afford to miss games and lose money. Rookie Baylor Kelly even said on camera she's scared about losing her paycheck. These aren't the star players with big contracts overseas and sponsorship deals. These are regular players who need their WNBA salaries to pay their bills. And they're watching Breanna Stewart, Nneka Oik, and Intensify Collier, who all have deals with other leagues like Athletes Unlimited or Unrivaled, make decisions that could cost the regular players everything.
Now, it being a large contingent of WNBA players is a key point. There's a large contingent of WNBA players playing in Athletes Unlimited, not Unrivaled, not Project B. They're not making a bunch of money right now playing basketball in Athletes Unlimited. This is just to get some conditioning, get some 5-on-5 in, and things of that nature. This is not something where you are going to fatten your pockets. So ultimately, the players in this league, these are those middle of the pack players who seem to be getting left out in thought by the veterans, the Nneka Ogwumike's, the Breanna Stewart's, the Intensify Colliers, who are all compromised but also can afford a lockout.
Here's what makes that Athletes Unlimited meeting so important. Nneka Ogwumike is the WNBPA president. She flew all the way to Nashville just to talk with players in that league. She didn't go to Unrivaled, where the top stars are making hundreds of thousands of dollars for just 8 weeks. She went to Athletes Unlimited, where players compete for smaller paychecks and just try to stay in shape. These are the forgotten players in this whole argument. They're not getting unrivaled contracts. They're not making millions playing overseas. They really need the WNBA season to start on time, because that's where most of their money comes from. What did Ogwumike hear at that meeting? Exactly what you'd think. Players are scared and frustrated. They feel like the star players leading these talks don't really understand what missing a season would do to regular players. Here's why. If you're Breanna Stewart with an unrivaled contract, deals with Puma and other big brands, and can make tons of money overseas, missing a WNBA season is annoying but not terrible. But if you're a second-year player fighting just to stay on a team, missing a season could end your career.
With Jade Melbourne and a bunch of Australian players who said they could not afford a WNBA lockout and that's not what they wanted. I been knew y'all wasn't on the same page. Here it says, The WNBA's proposal, the league's first response to the players' latest offer, which came more than 6 weeks ago, didn't move much money-wise, Stewart said, but there were some minimum standard requirements that did come into play. That was important, Stewart added, because that means that the league heard us on things that matter to us. And it also means that the league and the owners have been willing to compromise. We are still waiting to hear what you players have compromised on. We haven't heard it yet. Notably, the league's latest proposal offered concessions on player housing and facility standards. First-year players and players on minimum salary will be provided a one-bedroom apartment for the first 3 years of the CBA.
Now let's talk about what the owners actually offered, because this is really interesting. The proposal includes one-bedroom apartments for first-year players and those making the minimum salary for the first 3 years. Developmental players get studio apartments. This is a big deal because the league has been fighting hard against giving housing at all. The salary cap goes up to $5.65 million in 2026. The highest salaries climb to about $1.3 million in the first year and eventually reach almost $2 million by the end of the contract. More than one player per team can get these top salaries. The lowest salary starts at $230,000. The average salary starts at $530,000. Those are real numbers. Big increases from what players make now. Right now, the highest salary is around $240,000. We're talking about more than 5 times that amount. The current lowest salary is about $60,000, and that's jumping to $230,000. These aren't small changes. For most players in the league, these are life-changing raises. But here's the problem, and Stewart says it clearly. None of this fixes the revenue sharing issue. The players want 30% of the league's total revenue. The owners won't budge from around 15%, though they're willing to raise salaries and benefits instead.
However, the league's response did not address the gap between the sides on revenue sharing, though it did raise the salary cap to $5.65 million in 2026. A source familiar with the negotiation told CBS Sports. How that rise would affect specific salaries is unclear. The WNBA's proposal in early December offered a $5 million salary cap and a max salary of about $1.3 million in the first year of the deal. A source close to the situation told CBS Sports that over the course of the proposed deal, the maximum salary will raise to almost $2 million, and that multiple players on each team will be eligible for the max salary. The minimum salary in this deal will start at $230,000. The average will start at $530,000.
This is the main disagreement causing all the problems. The owners are saying, we'll pay you a lot more money, way more than now, but we won't tie it to a percentage of revenue because this league still doesn't make a steady profit. The players are saying, we don't care about your math. We want the same deal NBA players have, which is about 50% of basketball-related money. The problem with what the players want is that the WNBA's money situation isn't like the NBA's. The league has lost money for most of its history. The 2024 season was reportedly the first time the league almost broke even, and that was mostly because of Caitlin Clark boosting TV ratings and ticket sales. Many teams still lose money every year. The business survives because the NBA helps pay for it and owners are willing to lose money while building the brand. The owners aren't being unfair when they say we can't promise you 30% of revenue when we're not sure there will even be positive revenue to share. Instead, they're offering guaranteed salary increases that put real money in players' pockets whether the league makes a profit or not. But Stewart and the WNBPA leaders don't want that deal. They think it lets the owners control the story and the money. If you tie pay to revenue sharing, the thinking goes it forces owners to actually work on growing the business because their labor costs automatically go up when the league succeeds.
Really start hearing each other and they hear us on things that are non-negotiables. What are the non-negotiables? For them, it has been revenue sharing. They want 30% of revenue share. The WNBA is refusing to move on that. This is what you have to pay attention to in this entire thing. Right here. Right there. Revenue sharing. The owners have compromised on many, many things. We haven't seen anything the players have compromised on. The one thing the owners have stayed steady on is revenue sharing. We cannot go up to 30%. We absolutely will not. In fact, we can't go above this 15, but we are giving everyone more money. We are going to continue to pay for you guys' housing, which we didn't want to do. We're going to give on a lot of things. Breanna Stewart absolutely slammed that offer and basically said, look, all of that, the housing, all of the little things, yeah, that's cool. I don't care about keychains and trinkets. We care about revenue share.
This has gone on way longer than it needed to. That's a direct quote from Breanna Stewart about these negotiations. And she's right about how long it's taking. The current CBA ends in October. Free agency is supposed to open in January 2026. Training camps usually start in late April. We're now in February 2025, and the two sides still totally disagree on the main money issues. Stewart says she doesn't know if there's a final deadline where starting the season on time becomes impossible. But everyone who works in professional sports knows how this goes. If there's no deal by late March, teams can't plan their training camps. If there's no deal by early April, free agency gets delayed. If there's no deal by mid-April, you're looking at either starting late or canceling games. Here's what Stewart reveals at the end. Hopefully we can really start hearing each other, and they hear us on things that are non-negotiables. Translation: the players have drawn a line on revenue sharing and they won't move. Everything else, the housing, the facilities, the minimum standards, that's all nice. But the non-negotiable thing is getting that revenue percentage. The owners have now given in on many things. They agreed to keep paying for housing even though they didn't want to at first. They've raised the salary cap a lot. They've raised minimum salaries almost 4 times higher. They've let multiple players per team get maximum contracts. They've made facilities and working conditions better. What have the players compromised on? That's the question Stewart can't answer, because it seems like the answer is nothing. They started at 30% revenue sharing. They're still at 30% revenue sharing. They've accepted some extra benefits the owners offered.
Y'all told me y'all was a one united front and everybody was on the same page, but we found out that that was a lie and there is a fracture, which I already knew about because I put out videos in December and November with Deja Kelly saying she didn't want to lock out.
This is where the conflict of interest becomes impossible to ignore. Breanna Stewart has a big contract with Unrivaled, the 3-on-3 league she co-founded with Napisa Collier. Nneka Ogwumike, the WNBPA president, also plays in Unrivaled. Napisa Collier, another executive committee member, literally owns part of Unrivaled. These are the 3 players pushing the hard negotiating strategy that could result in a WNBA lockout. And what happens if the WNBA season gets delayed or canceled? Unrivaled becomes the main option for women's professional basketball in America. Athletes Unlimited gains power. The alternative leagues that these executives own or play in suddenly become way more important. Now, I'm not saying Stewart, Ogwumike, and Collier are deliberately ruining WNBA negotiations to help their own businesses, but I am saying it looks really bad. And I am saying that players like Baylor Kelly, who don't have unrivaled contracts or ownership stakes, are watching this and wondering if their union leadership really represents their interests or is just helping a small group of star players. The owners have made this point many times in private conversations with reporters. They're negotiating with union leaders who have direct financial reasons to see the WNBA get weaker compared to competitor leagues. That doesn't mean the players' demands are wrong, but it does raise a real question. Is the WNBA's position what's best for all 400-plus players in the league, or just what's best for the 30 players who have other ways to make money? Stewart's rejection of this latest offer makes that tension clear. The owners came back with real money, real increases, and real improvements to working conditions. And the response from union leadership was basically not good enough because you didn't give us the one thing we really want, which is a percentage of revenue they can count on whether the league actually makes a profit or not. Here's the reality check that needs to happen. The WNBA is not the NBA. It doesn't make billions of dollars. It doesn't have a 50-year track record of making profits. It doesn't get the same TV money or sponsorship dollars. Demanding the same revenue sharing as the NBA when the money situations are completely different isn't a negotiating position. It's fantasy. What the owners are offering is huge. Guaranteed money that doesn't depend on tricky accounting or guessing future revenue. A $230,000 minimum salary is life-changing for players currently making $60,000. A $1.3 million maximum salary climbing to $2 million puts WNBA stars in the same money conversation as professional athletes in other women's sports. But Stewart and the WNBPA leadership have decided that's not enough. They want the revenue percentage and they're willing to risk a lockout to get it. That means they're willing to risk the financial security of hundreds of players who can't afford to miss paychecks, all for a negotiating principle that may not even work economically for the league. The next few weeks will show whether this is a negotiating tactic or an actual dead end. If the players truly won't accept a deal without 30% revenue sharing and the owners truly won't offer more than 15%, then we're headed for a work stoppage. Training camps will get delayed. The season opener will get pushed back. And players like Baylor Kelly, who are already publicly scared about a lockout, will pay the price for a strategy driven by players who have other income sources. Stewart's right about one thing. This has gone on way longer than it needed to. But the reason it's dragged out isn't because the owners are being unreasonable. It's because the union leadership has drawn a line on an issue where the economics don't support their position, and they're refusing to compromise. The owners have moved on housing, on salaries, on facilities, on working conditions. The players have moved on nothing. So here's the question that should be dominating the conversation right now. What are the players willing to give up to get that revenue sharing percentage? Because negotiation by definition requires both sides to compromise. And so far, we've only seen one side doing that. If Breanna Stewart and the WNBPA leadership truly believe 30% revenue sharing is non-negotiable, they need to explain to players like Baylor Kelly why missing paychecks and potentially losing a season is worth fighting for that principle. They need to explain why guaranteed salary increases totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars per player aren't enough. They need to explain why the financial structure being offered, which would make WNBA players among the highest-paid women's team sport athletes in the world, isn't good enough. Because right now, from the outside looking in, it appears the players driving these negotiations have alternative income sources that protect them from the consequences of a lockout, and they're pursuing an all-or-nothing strategy that puts most union members' financial security at risk. That's not leadership. That's self-interest disguised as solidarity. The clock is ticking. The season is supposed to start in less than 3 months. And the gap between these two sides isn't getting smaller, it's getting bigger. Because one side keeps compromising and the other side keeps saying it's not enough. The question is whether it'll be the owner's resolve, the players' demands, or the 2025 WNBA season itself. What do you think? Are the players right to hold firm on revenue sharing, or are they overplaying their hand and risking a lockout that will hurt the very players they're supposed to represent? Drop your take in the comments, because this situation is about to reach a breaking point, and everyone involved needs to hear what the fans actually think about this mess.